Hey guys, this is Coach Emily from Bold and Badass Fitness, and today I want to talk to you about something that you're probably already doing, and it may be helping or harming your lifts depending on how you're doing it. It may be helping or harming the rest of your life as well, and that thing that we're going to talk about today is breathing. Breathing is something that everyone thinks they're doing, and oftentimes we just don't think about, which is, taking a step back for a minute makes sense. It's one of those things that is evolutionary advantageous not to think about. Doing little part of your brain in the very back, the brainstem, controls things like breathing and makes them subconscious, or not subconscious, makes them unconscious movements so that you don't have to constantly be like, take a left step, take a right step, breathe. But when we're lifting and we want to get the most out of your lifts, not just heavier lifts, but also better and safer lifts, thinking about your breathing and bringing it to the forefront of your mind, making it part of your conscious process, your setup for every lift you do, is super, super important, and I'll show you why. So one of the things that we use breathing for in lifting, other than just the fact that if you stop breathing, things get really hard, and you've probably noticed that if you've ever been really stressed out or focusing really hard on something, that oftentimes we start to hold our breath and you suddenly find that your heart is racing, that you feel a little winded, a little out of breath, just from doing nothing, and that's just because we subconsciously kind of tense up and hold our breath when we're in a stressful situation. So obviously, other than preventing that while you're lifting, which is even more common because people are often trying to remember, we're often trying to remember a long string of movements, like, okay, gotta put my feet here, gotta stand this way, gotta do this, and in the midst of that string, sometimes we just find ourselves forgetting it. So other than creating a breathing pattern so that we don't just forget, breathing can also be really helpful using belly breathing, or what's called the Valsalva maneuver, using that to stabilize the abdominals and to use the diaphragm to stabilize the abdominals and the spine so that you don't get low back pain while doing things like squatting, deadlifting, or any other upright movement that requires that you not flex your lower back, that you not hyperextend your low back in the midst of the movement, as obviously that can put a lot of pressure on the discs. So I'm going to show you how we set that technique up while standing, and then I'll show you a little practice routine you can do that can be good for de-stressing and just kind of resetting your breathing pattern. I use it for falling asleep, and it's just good for practicing feeling that breath in your belly. So first, while standing, if you're going to do a squat, there's a little setup, a little string of things that I want you to think about here. I'm going to find my regular squat stance, and then I'm going to go from a neutral spine position, the S-shaped back that I'm standing in now, to tucking my hips underneath me. I know that means I'm standing funny. I'm going to tuck my hips underneath me and then pull my rib cage down. Now my back is flat so that when I go to take a breath in, I'm going to stabilize in this position. Really important. I can take that stabilizing belly breath and hold in the neutral position, but now I'm stuck in the neutral position. So I'd rather have my back flat where I can get as much air into my belly and diaphragm as possible. Now I'm going to take a breath, making sure that instead of having my chest rise, my belly expands. Watch what happens with the chest breath, right? So I'll do this one forward and then we'll do it sideways so you guys can see me that way too. So when I breathe into my chest, get a few inches taller, right? You get another inch of height there. The shoulders rise, the chest rises. Now, the kind of breath I want you to do instead is breathing into your belly, and you'll notice my chest doesn't rise at all, my shoulders don't rise at all when I breathe into the belly. I'm just going to do this kind of Buddha belly here. Making your belly expand. I know this isn't cool, this isn't attractive. Everyone doesn't walk around trying to make their belly as big as possible all the time. And in fact, because we live in a culture where we wear pants and we care what people think of our midsections, it can be really hard to do this. We're really, really out of practice with just making the belly expand. So I'm going to breathe into my belly now in that flat back position. And in this position, I'm going to hold while squatting. Should mean that your back stays mostly flat all the way down, that you're not extending the low back or tipping the butt under at the bottom. Watch what happens when I don't do it that way. So here's a few squats without using the breath to stabilize. You'll notice my low back arches and my butt tucks under as I get to the bottom of the squat. Now doing it with the stabilization. Again, tucking the hips, ribs down, sharp breath into the belly. You notice that in this pattern you can hear me breathe. Part of how I like to fill my belly with air, and I know this kind of sounds like a voodoo party trick, but part of how I like to do it is by closing my mouth, putting my tongue on the roof of my mouth, and then inhaling sharply through my nose. Doing that series of techniques, tactics often leads to filling the bottom of the lungs before the top of the lungs. So That's how we're going to use the breath to stabilize for a squat. Same pattern applies if you're deadlifting. You're going to do the exact same thing. So that same flat back setup, breathe in. We're just going to go into a different movement at that point. You can use this for overhead pressing, for anything like that. And that's called the Valsalva maneuver. If you want to look that up, I'll post below so you guys can find that. Now, the other way that we can use that belly breathing is just to de-stress, to lower the heart rate, to calm down. And this is also a good technique to throw in there before you try using it in your lifts, just to get practice feeling your abdominals expand. So I'm going to get down on the floor. Once here, my knees are up. That allows me to press my low back into the floor. So I go again from that neutral spine position where the back is up to the hollow body position. Now my hips are tilted towards me. My ribs are pulling down towards my spine, towards the floor. And I'm just going to take a few breaths here, putting one hand on my chest so I can feel whether or not it's rising, one hand on my stomach. And I'm going to try to make my stomach expand before my chest. Taking a 7-second breath in. So these long, long, deep breaths. What I want you guys to try here while you're practicing this, imagine taking a breath that is 7 seconds in, 7 seconds of hold, 7 seconds out, and then a 7-second pause before you pull it in. That's a long time to spend on one breath. I'll show you what it looks like. This can be a little extreme, but it's really, really good for falling asleep, for just kind of getting into a rhythm while meditating, right? It's a long breath. It's a very long breath. So that gives you a few things you can try. When you're in this position on the ground, you want to feel this especially in your external obliques. So if as you're breathing, you feel your back expanding, pressing into the floor, it won't be that dramatic. It's not like a balloon, but a little bit like that. Another way you can test this while you're practicing is just putting your hands on your abdominals, putting your hands on your external obliques, so the sides of your waist, and trying to breathe into that area rather than breathing into your chest. So I hope those ideas have helped a little. I know that's a lot of material. Feel free to drop me a line if you have questions or comments on this, you have some other use for it. I'd love to hear. I know there are a lot of ways that this can be applied in your everyday life. So I hope that's been helpful for you guys. Definitely try that out, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.